Let's get all the people around.
Good episode, isn't it? Good episode. Sorry.
Right then, ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the slight delay in proceedings. There was a substantial queue for the convenience. So if you could all make your way back towards your seats, please, we'll get on with the second half of this evening's event. Thank you very much. Now, the second half of our evening is going to focus on the importance of bringing mindfulness and compassion to the public, making it available, making it known. And a vital part of this is bringing the theory, the science, and the clinical practice together in one, and having a holistic approach to mindfulness like we should have a holistic approach to our own health. We need to look at the links between our emotions and our health, what we feel and how we feel. Not just personally, but from a clinical perspective. It's known that stress has an impact on recovery rates. It's known that stress can cause strokes and heart attacks. This is known, which means it can be tackled. We are aiming to substantiate a really exciting area of research. And we need to validate the impact of non-toxic applications for well-being. I'd like to introduce a highly experienced specialist in mindfulness-based psychotherapy who has a master's in consciousness studies and transpersonal psychology. He's a practitioner from a tradition that has been using mindfulness for generations. A very dear friend of mine and everybody at The Flame, I'd like to welcome Dav Panesar.
When I started off, I had a black beard. This is what the stress has done to me. Okay, welcome and thank you for the introduction. We're going to approach in a new way. We're going to approach health outside the convention. Conventional medicine tends to see health or ill health to be the consequence of exposure to something, infection, stuff like this, genetics, or inflammation. These three contributors are seen to be the root cause of ill health. What we're going to present to you is something a little bit different. The root cause to your health isn't external, it's internal. Works from the inside out. And I will present to you with some information and some facts. I will refer to a sheet of paper simply because I can't remember everything. Age has got to me. When we look at emotions, generally we see it's something that's not quite discussed. It's not necessarily taught at universities, it's not taught at schools. We don't even know what's the difference between an emotion and a feeling. So if we begin with some definitions. To put things into context, let's first divide experience, knowledge, and belief. We have a flame here, we put our hand into the flame, we know what the experience of burning is. We have a scientist with a white coat and all the little bits, and they make the notes. The temperature, the skin, the reaction, the nervous reaction, the damage, all this stuff. This is knowledge. Experience, to put the hand in. Science is the knowledge. The scientist stands on the podium and they tell you, don't go near fire. You have the belief. Belief, knowledge, experience. So what we're going to share with you is these three things. First, my beautiful friends who shared their personal experience deep from the heart. It's a huge thing. It's a massive overcoming of a limitation that you set yourself to be able to come out and pour your heart out to strangers. And that goes to show what is possible once you get to grips with a very simple idea. Your reality, my reality, is created with my thoughts. If I am hungry, then the chances are I'm only going to see food shops when I go out. If I am angry, my world is going to appear a bit hostile. So our thoughts create our emotions. So let's just define the difference between an emotion and a feeling. Feeling is you walk into a cathedral, you see the beautiful tapestry and you go, oh! It's spontaneous. Emotion is sitting here and thinking, why did so-and-so do this to me? Is to bring something to your mind and play with it again and again and again, and it will create an emotional state. Emotions are created with your thinking. Simple. Thinking creates a response from your body, which is called an emotion, in order for you to deal with the circumstance. No emotion is bad, but there are healthy emotions and unhealthy emotions. So if I can just try and define this, whatever I say, it can be challenged and you question and answers, we are more than happy to open this dialogue. Our bodies are wired with some systems, like a circulatory system, but one of the emotional systems that we have is the threat response system, or what we call the flight-fright system. So when we feel that we are under threat, our body reacts. And our body reacts by creating lots and lots of glucose, our blood pressure goes up, our blood vessels get tighter, our adrenal glands start pumping adrenaline, and we get cortisol, some hormones that you can find in your blood the moment you get stressed. And it's normally good if the stress lasts for 5 minutes. But when we have stress, chronic stress, now we have Ebola. Tomorrow we're going to have another version of Super Ebola. And if you remember last year, it was some sort of a flying pig we had. And the time before that, it was something to do with some chickens that were going to come and kill us. So what we notice is that we are bombarded with information which induces a stress response. So this stress response, so you wake up in the morning, 7 o'clock, and the guy on the radio is telling you how many have been killed, how many are going to be killed, and you're next. At 7:15, they use the same words in a different way. At 7:30, they use the same words, but with a bit of more music. So by the time you've got up, hour, 2 hours later, your mind has already been contaminated. Your mindset has already been created. And you carry that with you. And the rest of the day appears hostile. But what it's done to our biochemistry is that it keeps us in this toxic state. Lots of glucose in our body, lots of cortisol in our body, blood pressure increasing up. And then we go and say, by the way, I'm not feeling well now, I can't sleep. I feel a bit anxious. I feel a little bit apprehensive, and I feel emotionally, sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down. And this doctor says to you, oh, by the way, you're suffering from depression. Hold on a second. I gave you some symptoms. You've just classified them together as a depression. But no word as depression existed pre-1950s. It's a manufactured disease. Whether we accept it or not, it's a manufactured way of looking at symptoms which have a different cause. The treatment is treating a label, but not the root cause. The root cause is the fact that we are in a state of threat. Our mental state feels that we are under threat. And when we feel under threat, our physical body changes. And this change is the onset of disease. The high blood pressure will inevitably lead to some sort of cardiovascular disease. The glucose level will contribute towards diabetes. The cortisol will create inflammation inside you. That inflammation will become the cancer, will become the rest of your diseases, the blood clots, etc. But all it has been created with is your mental state. So when we go to a doctor and say, I am not feeling well, then I'm not sleeping, rather than switching off this mental state, this threat-based state, they simply provide us with certain kinds of chemicals, which they affectionately call medicines, which then contribute, may get rid of one part of the symptom, but contribute towards adding yet more toxins into your blood system, into your physiology, changing your physiology, changing your biochemistry. So emotions can be seen in three ways, but let's look at it two ways. Healthy emotions, unhealthy emotions. Unhealthy emotions are emotional states which create a biological change in your body which is detrimental to your health. And these emotional states are what? Fear, anger. Give you a little statistic about anger. Anger normally lasts 3 to 5 minutes. You can normally play with it for many hours later, but actually the energy of anger is short-lived. But it will impact your immune system for 6 hours. 5 minutes of anger will impact your immunity for 6 hours. 5 hours, 6 hours, but several hours. Every time we get into a threat response, the cortisol brings your immunity down. So when we're freaking out about getting Ebola, we're making ourselves more vulnerable to getting it. Irrespective of whatever else, anything else. As soon as your immunity goes down, you're more susceptible. So you have these sets of emotions that we create through thinking, or sometimes through circumstances. So we're walking outside, someone jumps in front of us, we get a bit freaked out. It's a normal response. It should last a few minutes and we're out of it. But when it's there constantly, it then becomes a toxic cocktail that's in our body. But then there is the other side. We talk about the threat response system, but there's another response system, which is called the soothing response system. When we feel safe, when we feel nurtured. Most of our colleagues spoke about one key theme, and that was how they treated themselves. Ask yourself this question. How do you speak to yourself? Do you give yourself a hard time? Do you overcritical about yourself? And if you had a little child, would you treat them the same way? And if you wouldn't, then why would you treat yourself like this? Compassion needs to begin with ourselves. Why compassion? Well, let me tell you the good news about compassion. Compassion has been shown to increase your immunity, lower your blood pressure, reduce stress, reduce depression, reduce anxiety, including many other things. If you were to go to that which has all knowledge, not God anymore, but Google, and were to type in emotional physiology, the impact of emotions on your physiology, and you will find many research, much research, how gratitude lessens pain. 3 things that simple exercise. What 3 things are you grateful for today? Just 3 things. And if you had this exercise every day, you will find within 5 days, there's a sense of well-being. But I can ask you another set of exercise. Tell me 3 things that irritated you. And let's do this for a week. And let's see how we feel. Simple. The way we speak to ourselves, the way we cultivate these emotions has to be a learned experience. And that's hopefully what we're going to share with you today. What I'm presenting to you today is simply the connection between health and emotions, and how emotions are the catalysts of good health or bad health. Give you some examples. 31 heart patients, divided into two groups. 15 optimistic, 16 pessimistic. After 8.5 years, research I think done in Chicago, 15 of the 16 pessimistics had died. On the other side, 4. Another study, 170,000 people in 130 countries, followed for 25 years. Looked at childhood trauma connected to adult disease. And what did they find? Depending on the type of emotional trauma that you experienced, the disease complemented it. So if it was something that left you with anger, you have heart disease, heart attack, cardiovascular disease. If it was something to do with separation, this is a controversial claim I'm going to make here, but hey, what's new? There is evidence to suggest that type 1 diabetes, not type 2, type 1 diabetes, seems to be, in several cases, as a result of shock, separation, trauma. There's a relationship to that. In many traditions, it is understood that certain emotions are stored in certain organs. For example, liver stores anger. Pancreas stores a different emotion. So we will find that there are relationships between emotions and the type of diseases that we generate in our own body specific to those organs. And this evidence is available everywhere. But what it does give us is a very, very powerful tool. If emotions can determine the quality of my health, and thoughts are the catalyst to the emotion, then you have the power, through simple exercise of mindfulness, to become aware, first, what you are thinking. And secondly, as your practice matures, to have the choice to be able to play the same game again or remove your awareness from this thought and put it to your breath. Thus breaking cycles of anger, fear, depression, rumination. Why does mindfulness work so well with depression? Because one of the key factors of depression is rumination. Thinking about something in the past, playing it over and over again where you are the victim. You do that to a child, they'll become depressed. You do that to yourself, you're going to become depressed. So by learning, simply learning what our mind is doing, we take the first step towards taking control of our health. All these individuals who spoke to you, and there are many others, hundreds, have gone from situations of 15, 16 years on drugs, on antidepressants, on a whole range of other therapies, to taking control of their own health. It's more sense of well-being. They enjoy life. Life has a purpose. Not because life is purposeful, but because their life is purpose, because their experience of life is considered to be something precious and something to learn from. So mindfulness at the first level allows us simply to watch our mind and become aware of our thoughts. But as this cultivates deeper, it gives us the control of the type of thoughts we want to entertain. So going back to 3 thoughts that you were grateful for today, or 3 things, just a very simple exercise. If you were to do nothing else as a result of this event or this evening, but just look at those 3 things every day, just 3 things that you are grateful for on that day, and just see what kind of wellness that promotes in you. And that ultimately is putting your hand in the fire, not listening to the doctors, not listening to the people telling you about what's happening, but you yourself taking that opportunity to put something through. The formula for a good life is quite simple. A still mind, cultivate positive emotions. This allows you to create relationships which give you meaning and a sense of purpose. But it has to begin with your mind, because only you have that ability to alter. Not me, not anyone else. But no one teaches you this. So one of the most important things about this event is that we wish, through the flame and everyone else that's involved in this, to make this available to everyone. It's your birthright not to be ill. You will notice that if you cut yourself, the body heals itself as long as you keep it clean. The body has an innate capacity to heal itself as long as you stop throwing poison into it. That's all it is. And all you need to learn, and all we need to learn, is to switch off from this threat cycle so the poison that's been going around inside finds a balance. And guess what? The body starts to heal itself. Emotionally first, psychologically, and ultimately physically. So you start saying, actually the pains aren't as bad as they used to be. They may be just as bad, but your attitude is different. So it's enabling the body's natural resilience to be allowed to take care of the body itself. Stop interfering. And the only way we interfere is with not knowing what we are thinking and who's polluting our minds. I've spoken about some aspects of positive emotions. Optimism, gratitude, compassion, simple things that we can include in our life on a daily basis. Or just looking at the sun, looking at the stars, looking at the beautiful autumn leaves, taking a moment out, appreciating life for what it is in this moment. Because the only thing that all of us share, the only truth, is that we have this moment. You have this moment, I have this moment. But remember, life has 3 phases. It begins, it remains, and then it dissolves. What happens after that is not my concern. But for what is important for all of us is to begin to appreciate first what we have, our own innate capacity to heal ourselves, to empower ourselves, but more importantly, also to ensure that we don't allow external pollution to just simply being thrown at us. If I was to feed you with poison, you may throw it out, you may vomit, and it will come out. But once this goes in here, some of the images, some of the barbarism, some of the unspeakable cruelty that we see today, when we see those images and they go in here, how do you take them out? How do you get rid of this pollution? Mindfulness is to mental health what brushing your teeth is to dental health. When was the last time you brushed your mind? I will leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to introduce an Argentine-born psychologist and expert in adult and child psychotherapy. He's experienced in working with ethnic minorities from around the world and has many years of experience in private and NHS practice, and he will be discussing the benefits of forgiveness. If I could welcome Eduardo Pitchon.
Good evening, all. Right. Thank you very much for inviting me here to speak to you today. And I wanted to say before I start how delighted I am that Coventry is setting up a meeting like tonight. The importance of this for the psychohygiene of a community cannot be underestimated. I had the opportunity of being very touched by your presentations of the people who have actually had the courage of coming to talk to us tonight, and for the incredible richness of Dav's presentation on the importance of awareness in the mind. Now, as far as I'm concerned, as a psychotherapist, my main job is to try to help people to develop a more compassionate mind. And compassion is a muscle. It needs to be exercised. It's very easy for us actually to be inspired in a meeting like tonight and say, yes, what a good idea. But developing an awareness, changing our mental habits, becoming conscious of our thoughts. Think of it in this way. I think Dav explained it very well. And this is a complement of what he was saying. Thoughts are like clouds in the sky. They're there all the time. A lot of the time, most of the time, we're not aware of them. They float through the sky. But each thought actually is like a comet. It has a tail. And the tail is the emotion that it carries with it. So each thought, in a way, carries an emotion, carries a feeling. And all those feelings together create, for lack of a better word, what I call a psychoclimate, a psycho-emotional climate, which is the climate within which we're immersed, within which we live, and what happens inside us. And each thought, actually, as Dav explained so articulately, triggers off the pharmacopoeia of our body. Each thought, each feeling, in a way, generates some chemical situation in our body, so it's hardly surprising that it will have an effect on our physical health. We are not aware of it a lot of the time, so becoming aware of this, becoming aware of our thoughts, mindfulness is a word that has actually been coined. Meditation is a word that has actually been coined. 120 years ago, Freud talked about the unconscious as well. Making conscious all these things that are going on in our mind. The raising of our consciousness. And you don't have to be in psychoanalysis to do that. You can do it through meditation. You can do it through paying attention. You can do it in 1,000 ways. And I think that the work that Flame is doing, I think that the work that Dav is doing here in Coventry is pioneering work. It's something really that the community can benefit enormously, and we have a lot to be grateful for. Now, one of the ways that I like to look at our minds, in order to simplify it, is there are two mafia families inside us. There's the family of love and the family of fear. Now these two mafias, they're like two big mafiosis. They have a lot of relatives. So, out of fear, we have anger, greed, revenge. They're all cousins, second cousins, children of byproducts of the family of fear. Out of the family of love, what we have is all what Dav was calling the positive emotions. So they're also cousins, children, second cousins, uncles, aunts. So part of the journey of healing, in order to generate a more benign inner climate, in order to change our psychoclimate, is actually transforming fear into love. Now, how does that happen? I think that when we are afraid, we contract. There's a blockage in our natural energy, in the energy of our being. So it's actually through releasing, through opening the blockage, through the circulation of energy, where actually healing takes place. And so, for example, if I get very angry with someone, it's usually a reactive response that comes from an unrecognized aspect which is much deeper inside me, which is pain. It's not acknowledged pain. Someone was talking today about the difficulty in forgiving someone without getting their apology. I think that what she was actually, and expressing her anger, what she was also talking, what she was talking really about was the depth of her pain. The depth, the pain that's in the heart. If one can actually articulate that, if one can actually get in touch with the pain, then somehow one brings down one's barriers and allows oneself to build a bridge. What comes from the heart touches the heart of another. Now, this is all very nice what I've just said today, and what Dav has said, and what all of you have said, but it takes a lot of bravery to be able to open ourselves up. We need to jump over a lot of our hurdles, a lot of our conditioning. A lot of these things, actually, we've all been brought up to think in this way since we were very little. We've built our barriers a long, long time ago. So, actually, it's about breaking old conditionings, and the older the habit, the harder it is to break. So, we need to become very, very conscious. That's why I said it's a muscle. It needs to be exercised. We can all be very inspired in a meeting like today. I certainly know I am, and have been, and I hope you have been moved as well. But can we remember this from day to day? Can we do the exercise that Dav has told us of remembering every day, religiously, 3 good things that we're grateful for? Unfortunately, in my experience, I see that we live in a state of what I call cosmic amnesia. We forget. So I'm going to leave you just with one last sentence. Remember to remember. Remember to remember. That's the prime directive. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have just a brief little question and answer. We're going to start off with my wonderful assistant, Pushy, who's going to be going around with the mobile microphone.
Oh, it's on. There we go.
That's good. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pose a couple of questions to you. Just very simple things, sort of about the kind of thing that we've been discussing this evening. If you feel like you want to pitch in, stick your hand up in the air. So firstly, what are unhealthy emotions? What is your understanding of an unhealthy emotion? If nobody puts their hand up, I will just start picking out and pointing at people. Anybody? An unhealthy emotion? Okay, this lady that's along the front here, Pushy. Okay, and why would you consider that to be an unhealthy emotion?
Because it gives you feeling now, they change.
Exactly. In counterpoint to that, what's a healthy emotion? Feel free to continue.
Being happy.
And why would you consider happiness to be a healthy emotion?
Because it gives you a peace and it just makes you feel good.
So we're talking about the effect that those emotions are having on us. Dav?
Can I just say something about the illusion of happiness? We're given this idea that we have to chase happiness. But you always find that happiness is transient. It exists for a couple of minutes. So you are working very hard to buy a new car, you find your new car, the moment you've got your new car, happiness is gone. So we chase this idea of happiness. Perhaps, I suppose, another way of looking at it is contentment would be a more stable space, whereas happiness may give us just a moment of pleasure.
Okay. What links can we see between our emotions and our health? Anybody? Come on, let's make Pushy do some running around. Somebody put their hand up? Anybody want to volunteer? Oh, gentleman at the back.
On my way.
Hello Dave, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Great. I've got some hair, but when I was really angry and going through some stress, a lot of it's like that. So anger is
Okay. And then we've got evidence from proverbially the horse's mouth. Anger has a physiological impact on your body. It's undeniable, it's incontrovertible, it's proven, it's evident, it happens. What is your understanding of compassion? Or more precisely, what does compassion mean to you? Can anybody give us an example of a time when they've felt compassionate or felt that other people have been compassionate with them? Okay, my turn. Oh, no, lady at the front. Excellent.
I would say for me it's being at peace. Every single thing on the planet, so like people, animals, leaves, trees, the sky, it's all perfection. It's something that we're not actually taught, definitely. And whether you believe in God, universe, or whatever you believe in, it is the divine, I would say it's grace for me.
Ask a question. Do you think we are hardwired? Do you think we are hardwired for compassion? What I mean by that is, do you think it's a natural state? How many of us can, when we watch people starving in different parts of the world, how many of us find that difficult to watch? Because we are innately hardwired for that. But this is not cultivated, as you say. It's not allowed to be brought out. It's seen as a form of abuse. Yet it has been demonstrated to be critical to the sense of well-being, to be able to support to them.
Okay. Now, does anybody have any questions? Any questions for Eduardo? Any questions for Dav? Okay, if you think of anything later, then... Oh, sorry, again the gentleman at the back.
Hi, Eduardo. How do we embrace compassion as human beings? Like I think Dave's job is so busy and we're told we get so angry. I feel in so many situations like tragedy that we should feel like compassion. Like my mum passed away at my hospice last year. And it was only in that time that I really embraced like true compassion and that true feeling. But that's an absolutely beautiful feeling to have, even though it's sad. How would we sort of accumulate that feeling every day in our lives? Because I feel if you could do that, get to that level of love, it would really help you.
My friend, that's a very, very important question. And I think it's important actually to be able, first of all, to be compassionate with the unresolved areas in our hearts and in our minds. If you have a loss, you're going to go through all the emotions. You're going to go through the anger, through the loss, through the pain, through the grieving. But I think that each one of these emotions can actually be accepted or rejected. You know, Dav gave an example before about people being ill. Yeah, these two groups of people, the positive view and the negative view. We only can do two things with our minds. We can either curse or we can bless. We can either accept or we can reject. And what we resist will persist. What we reject will actually be clamoring at the doors of our minds and of our hearts to come back in. We'll be trying to, and we'll use the same force that we are using to reject it against us, to attack us and to come in. If we can actually embrace them, because they are after all a part of us, if we can actually accept them and love them, then in a way they will become transformed, they will become digested by us, and they will be a part of us that feeds the whole of who we are. We can't disinvent things that already have been invented in the same way that we can't cut away parts of who we are. We do it at our peril. The journey is towards integration, not towards splitting. It's towards acceptance. It's a journey of a hero, because you need the courage actually to be able to do that and to tolerate the discomfort and the pain. I hope that answers your question.
It does, yeah. It makes a great sense.
Okay, we have one more question from a gentleman just at the front. Oh, sorry, we have more than one more question.
Can you hear me? Sorry, you can't see me. Just in response to what Rory said about compassion, because it tends to be things like this. A lot of the things we talk about tend to be quite rhetoric, and it's brilliant ideas, big ideas, and just thinking about compassion in your sort of day-to-day life. And I've thought of many times when I'm at the train station and I'm coming back from work and I'm trying to get somewhere and I'm in a rush. It's very crowded at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and somebody bumps into me, and they either say sorry or they don't say sorry. They look at me or they don't, and it's just basic things like that when you make a decision to feel okay about something like that, like somebody bumping into you, or you make a decision not to feel okay about it, and you manifest this in your response to them. So they say sorry, you either say, oh, it's okay, it doesn't matter, and actually you think it doesn't matter, they've bumped into me, so what? Or you can kind of instill it in yourself that it does mean something to you and you do mind it, and this is kind of reflected in your responses. And so for me it comes down to a level of kindness and actually forgiving people for little things that they do, and that's on a very basic level. It's on a very surface level. When we get a bit deeper and things get a bit bigger and you come down to life situations, maybe someone's wronged you or someone's made you feel a certain way for a certain period of time, and actually by way of understanding, I think, is how you reach a level of compassion and a level of forgiveness. And I think you have to be compassionate before you can be forgiving of someone, because it's only through that journey of understanding, of realising that somebody has made they may have made a mistake, they made a decision and it wasn't necessarily a good one, everyone, either for you at that point in time, other people at that point in time, or even for themselves in the long run. But when they made that decision, it was the right decision for them to make at that time, and you have to forgive them for that decision. And likewise, you have to forgive yourself for decisions. You have to forgive yourself for how you've responded to situations, because we are conditioned to respond in the ways that we are. You know, if someone bumps into us, we are conditioned to feel like it's not okay. So on a basic level, I think it's understanding that leads to compassion, that leads to forgiveness, and I think that has a positive, accumulative effect in our lives, and it instills a sense of well-being. So we're kinder to others, we're kinder to ourselves, and the world feels better, it feels more compassionate because we give out more compassion. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just one more question from the gentleman on the front.
Mine's a very short question. It's for Dav. The analogy that you used, Dav, between brushing your teeth and cleansing the brain, I just feel a bit uncomfortable with as it were brainwashing or cleansing. And so I'd like you to explain what does that mean, because some kind of quite dangerous ideas around cleansing the brain also into my mind as well.
That's a good question, but you notice the conditioned response. The question is about the analogy about brushing your teeth is as important. Meditation is as important to you, your mental health, as brushing your teeth is to your dental health. The moment we talk about the mind, because we don't necessarily have an understanding of the mind, we feel it's being, in this case, maybe brainwashed. But I would suggest that you've already been brainwashed. You've already been taught to think in a particular way. We've already been taught to find the external savior to save me out of my problems. We have already been taught and brainwashed to go to the medical man and to give the most important asset of our life, our health, to someone for 5 minutes so they can prescribe you the poison of the month. No one questions it. Let me answer the question directly. Mindfulness enables you to see the content of your mind, what your mind is saying, what your mind is doing. It's not so much brainwashing, but detachment from the content of your thoughts to observing the process of your thinking. So in fact, it's detaching yourself, separating yourself away from the pollution of mind, just the random thoughts. So rather than saying, and this is again within CBT, cognitive therapy, the idea is if you have a negative thought, replace it with a positive thought. It's not that. We are not replacing one kind of thinking with another kind of thinking. We are simply saying we are not our thoughts. I can say this, but 6 weeks of meditation will show it to you. You are not your thoughts, but you have thoughts. Depending on the nature of your thoughts, colors your reality. So if my nature of my thought is that this is the right way, the only way, it's my thought that enables me to have that belief, which I then go and exert on someone else. So it's not brainwashing, more like is brain unwashing, because the conditioning is already there, and as Eduardo so eloquently said, this collective amnesia, this collective hypnosis or semi-hypnosis of not questioning reality. Ask a simple question to yourselves. Do you know who you are? And if you don't know who you are, not just the name that you didn't consent to and someone gave it to you, But if you ask yourself, do I really know what I am and who I am? Forget about my purpose. And spend all my life collecting plastic, which the moment you die goes into a jumble sale. Is this the purpose of my life? So through conditioning, we don't question that. We are conditioned into achievement. From the moment we are born, the conditioning is, you must do better. You must get your A levels, you must get your O levels, you must get your degree, you must get your job, you must get your mortgage, you must get your wife, you must get your husband, you must get your family, you must get your car. This is conditioning, this is brainwashing. But no one tells you how to step out of it and look at life for what it is. So I would say it's not so much brainwashing, but brain unwashing, deconditioning, dehypnotizing. Hope that answers.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? No? Okay. Then I have one final question, which is slightly pointed. What does collective compassion feel like? And now, thanks to Dav, we're going to have the opportunity to answer that question for ourselves. So if you'd welcome back up Mr. Dav Panesar.
Experience, knowledge, belief. We're now moving into the experience, putting our hand in the fire. Yeah? So we won't talk about compassion. Let me just clarify some understandings of compassion that may help us. Compassion is replacing self-judgment with self-kindness. I think Kathy said that. Self-judgment is replaced with self-kindness. We can all make mistakes. And we all do make mistakes. And it's okay. That's part of life. Compassion means not isolation, but common humanity. I think Ollie was saying in his conversation when he was discussing, sharing his experience, he felt isolated. It's happening to him. But no, we're all in the same game. Suffering is suffering. Fear is fear. Pain is pain. We all are in the same game. And it's this common humanity. So when someone bumps into us in the morning and they are in a very distressed state, the response may be, how dare you do that? Response may be, I expect an apology. Or the response may be, wow, this man must be really stressed. A kind response, a compassionate response, an understandable response. We have to be open to other people's states of mind. We have to be open to them. They're sick, but they don't know they're sick. They're stressed. Stress is a form of sickness. If you are constantly stressed, it's a form of illness, a form of mental illness. They just don't know they're that. So they need time. So there needs to be a compassionate approach to that, an open approach to that. And the third thing is mindfulness. So you have common humanity over isolation, you have self-kindness over self-judgment, and mindfulness over identification with your thoughts. Coming back to the question Gurnam asked. Identification with your thoughts, a very interesting term in your tradition called manmukh, is exactly that. Being immersed in the content of your thought and your emotion and seeing that as your reality. Mindfulness allows us to detach and not become so identified. So when we have these three components, we experience a space of compassion. So I'm going to do a little meditation. Hopefully it will allow us to feel that. So sure. Okay. I'll walk around. Yes. Can everyone hear me? No? Hello? Okay. All right. We always begin meditation with posture. And our posture is upright. Our back is straight. Our head and our neck are aligned. What do I mean by that? They're in as much a straight line as you can get them without becoming uptight. Your eyes are closed, your mouth is closed. Just take a moment to feel the chair or bench you're sitting on and the contact it makes with your body. Allowing it to support your breathing.